In the early 70s, writer Laird Koenig wrote a stage play called The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane. It was about an extremely intelligent 13-year-old girl who was living a secret life. After he wrote it, he realized something. There was no way he'd be able to get a young actress who could play the part night after night for months on end. He showed the play to his agent, who suggested he rewrite it as a novel, which he did. The book had been out for a few months, and after talking to his friend, director Nicholas Gessner, he sent him a copy to read. Gessner loved it. He read the entire book in one sitting, and once it was over, he called Koenig to tell him he wanted to turn it into a movie. Unfortunately, it was too late. The book was already optioned by Sam Spiegel, the famous producer who handled films like The African Queen, The Bridge Over the River Kwai, and Lawrence of Arabia. Spiegel wanted to move ahead with the production, but was having problems with his associates. They couldn't agree on how the film should be handled, so they dropped it. Gessner jumped at this opportunity and optioned it before anyone else could. Since Koenig wrote the novel, Gessner hired him to write the screenplay. During this time, Martin Scorsese had just finished filming Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and was in the lab color grading it. He spoke to Gessner and invited him to see a screening of a work print. While watching the film, he was captivated by a relatively unknown Jodie Foster. He immediately knew he wanted her for his film. The next day, he had a meeting with her mother and signed her to the film without even needing to audition. He was that sure that she was his star. Gessner sent a copy of the script to Martin Sheen, who really liked it. He contacted Gessner, letting him know he was interested in the part of Mario, the young magician. Gessner had a meeting with him to tell him he was far too old to play Mario, and convinced him to take the role of the villain Frank. While Sheen was a known actor by that point, Jodie Foster was the lead, and they were having trouble finding a budget without a bankable star. Gessner decided to make it a French-Canadian co-production, so they would qualify for various subsidies and tax breaks. In order to do this, they had to film in Canada, as well as hire some Canadian actors and crew. For the part of Mrs. Hallett, they hired Canadian actress Alexis Smith. Smith was very well known and starred in dozens of productions up to that point. They hired Scott Jacoby to play the magician Mario. They were having trouble finding a house they could use for the film. It needed to be secluded down a long lane, but this was very uncommon in Canada. This was because in Canada, only rich people had houses with long lanes that led to the highway. Most houses were located closer to the road since it was very expensive to plow, and with Canadian winters, they had to plow often. They finally found a house in Montreal that was perfect. They acquired a little over $1 million Canadian dollars for the budget. They started filming on November 4th, 1975. It was the morning of the first day of shooting, and it snowed. They weren't prepared and had to delay the day's shots. This panicked some of the financial partners who wanted to abandon the project. Gessner had an emergency meeting with the partners and came up with an idea. He quickly wrote some scenes that took place later in the film and used the snow as a way to show the passage of time. After that, filming went along smoothly. The movie opened with Jodie Foster and a birthday cake. This was to celebrate her actual birthday, which was November 19th. She just turned 13. The novel the film was based on could be labeled as horror, but Gessner wanted to make it more of a mystery with a bit of an unconventional love story. So he focused on those elements the most. He wanted to make sure to keep the blood to an absolute minimum. The exterior was the house in Montreal, but the interior were all sets, except for the one bathroom scene. That was inside the house. Some of the other locations included Knowlton, Quebec, Canada, and Maine, USA. Gessner kept it light on set, and did his best to keep it tension-free. He wanted the actors to relax and focus on their roles. Whenever there was a production problem, he handled it off-set. Sheen enjoyed the part of Frank because he preferred to play difficult roles. Howard was a child molester who hid his intentions behind his own children.
Oh, don't get mad. It's just a game. It's just a silly birthday game, that's all. You don't think I was trying to be fresh, do you? Oh, don't be silly. Yeah, I've got 2 kids of my own, and I'll be along here any minute.
In the beginning, Frank seems to be more of an annoyance than a threat. That is until the scene where he kills Rin's hamster. They had a live hamster named Gordon, but needed one they could kill for the movie. The assistant prop man went to the local university hospital, where they did medical research on dead hamsters. He brought back a few that looked like Gordon. So in the scene, Sheen's holding the real Gordon, and when he kills it, it's one of the dead ones. Sheen hated doing the hamster scene, but understood it was integral to the film. He said he still gets hate mail about it. Later in the film, there was supposed to be a brief nude scene where Rin gets into bed with Mario. Since Foster was only 13, they obviously couldn't do this. Gessner spoke to her mother, and they were able to get her 19-year-old sister Connie to be a body double. A few weeks later, Foster was feeling embarrassed by the whole thing and asked Gessner if they could remove the scene. He agreed, but one of the Canadian co-producers insisted on keeping it in the film, so it stayed. Rumor had it there was a producer, most likely the same one, who was trying to get her to show more skin in the film. That's some situational irony right there, considering the villain in the movie is a pedophile. For the scene where Mrs. Hallett gets knocked out by the trap door, they designed a special door made out of ultralight balsa wood. The film's hairdresser then hid a cushion under her hair to protect her head when they dropped the door on it. In the book, the scene played out much differently. Rin closes the door and feeds a gas pipe down there to suffocate her. While it worked in the book, Gessner knew it wouldn't work on film. He spoke to Laird, who rewrote it to make her death an accident. Principal photography wrapped in December of 1975, but with second unit, it took about 10 weeks to film. Gordon the hamster was loved by everyone on set, and at the end of filming, the costume lady adopted him. The movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May of 1976. After the screening, a distributor spoke to Gessner. He told him while watching the film he was enamored, and when it got to the final shot of Foster, he was sold. He said, "If this is the final shot, I'll buy the movie." The final shot was the camera holding on Jodie Foster's face for 3 minutes. Right then and there, he bought the rights and distributed the picture. The movie did very well. Jodie Foster won a Saturn Award for Best Actress. Gessner was nominated for Best Director, Koenig was nominated for Best Writer, and Alexis Smith was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Also, despite him making this more of a teenage love story than a horror film, it won a Saturn Award for Best Horror Film. After watching the film with an audience and seeing them scream at the trapdoor scene, he realized this may indeed qualify as a horror film. The film ended up being one of 5 films starring Jodie Foster in 1976. This, Bugsy Malone, Freaky Friday, Echoes of Summer, and her breakout film, Taxi Driver. Since Taxi Driver was getting so much attention, they gave Jodie Foster top billing on the film when it was released. This was the first of many top-billed lead roles for the actress. The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane is a terrific film. Jodie Foster is incredible in the lead, so much so you forget she's really 13. Sheen's fantastic as the completely hateable Frank. While watching the film, you can tell it was originally a stage play. There's never more than 3 people in a scene, and there's tons of dialogue. It all works thanks to the talents of everyone involved. No one was giving a bad performance, not even Gordon. While technically this film ends up being classified as horror, it really isn't. It's pretty far out from what I usually cover, but I'm trying to break out a bit more this year to showcase some great films that you wouldn't expect to hear about from me. It's a shame it seems Jodie Foster doesn't like this film much. There was an interview where she said she wasn't particularly fond of this one. I have to wonder if it's the film itself or the memories of the creepy producer. She also wasn't happy with the Gordon scene, saying they could have done it some other way that didn't involve disfiguring a dead hamster. If you like mysteries and want to see some astounding performances, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane deserves your attention.
Your son says I have pretty hair. Did he tell you that? Huh?
We'll get the glasses now.